All right. So, I have a question.
Uh-oh, what's your question?
What are your thoughts on karma?
Um, I think, realistically speaking, because we're being honest here,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
well,
Of
this is what we're here for.
course.
Um, it's a complicated thing about it because like you have different forms of karma and where karma comes from. The stuff in regards to faith, you have just the general, you do bad stuff happens to you, and some of that's adopted into like the rule of three. Anything that you put out into the world comes back to you threefold and stuff like that. And I don't really believe in karma, but that doesn't mean I don't rather enjoy it when I watch somebody get their just desserts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think that they're getting what's coming to them, though,
Mm.
because I've spent a lot of time with people that have wronged me, and they don't get their just desserts for a little while then, and it's like, is that karma, or are they just fucking up at that point, type of thing?
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say that I believe in karma either because I feel like there are so many people, or there's so much stuff that is so horrible happening that no one deserves to go through. Well, practically no one, anyways.
Hmm.
Um, so that alone makes it difficult for me to justify the concept of karma because it's like, yeah, no, you'd have to be extraordinarily shitty to deserve something like that, and this person hasn't been that bad.
Yeah,
Um, and then there's
because.
like people who do so much good and they don't necessarily seem to be getting that in return.
Mhm.
So that makes it difficult for me to believe in karma, even if maybe I would like to believe in that.
Well, the other general thing about it is that the Western view on karma is so far removed from where it came in because like there was, by all means, whoever knows more about it, feel free to correct me. But generally speaking, you had the different caste systems.
Yeah.
And so what it was is that when you would do good things through your life, you would go up in caste system. And when you would do bad things, you would go below it type of
But
thing.
wasn't that more like in your next life you have a chance to
Hmm.
be born into a higher caste because you couldn't change caste, like you're set in your caste from birth,
Hmm.
but then it's like, well, if you do really good things this life, next life maybe you'll be in a higher caste.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like when we in the West talk about karma, we separate it so much from the concept of rebirth because it's not very prevalent in our society. Um,
The
Whereas originally it was also very tied to, like, yeah, you're not gonna get the benefits in this life, it's for your next life.
hmm the other aspect about that too is even when we tied it to rebirth, like how it's explained beforehand is if you're a bad person, you're gonna be reincarnated as a bug, and it's like, but that's not how that works. It's not how any of that works. Type of thing.
Yeah, I was just curious. But I will say that I am also not above a certain amount of Schadenfreude um, in my life. Uh, I am not a good enough person to not take pleasure in people who've treated me poorly having unfortunate events in their lives to a certain extent, of course. I'm not gonna be like a psychopath and be like, yeah, you totally deserve this totally awful thing that happened. Not like that. It's more like, within reason.
That's fair. I mean, to be perfectly honest, and I understand people that don't feel that type of thing. It's like any other feelings. We've talked about taste and stuff beforehand. But it's kind of like I'm not gonna look at somebody lesser for having Schadenfreude-like feelings. I have Schadenfreude, and I'm not going to sit there and talk about having Schadenfreude-like feelings if somebody doesn't like Schadenfreude type of thing.
Yeah,
But like,
I think for
people
me,
sometimes just deserve those bad things happening,
I mean,
or the other end of it. Yeah.
particularly if it's actually consequences of their actions. It's like, yeah, you did this bad thing and you gained it short-term benefit, and long-term it came back to bite you in the ass. Then I'm definitely gonna be more happy than if it's just, yeah, you stubbed your toe and you were mean to me, so therefore karma. Haha.
Yeah. The other thing about it is like, even if I'm not gonna sit there and be all like, "Oh yeah, well you should deserve this because you treated me poorly," I'm still gonna laugh at a child getting pegged in the head and falling over by a dodgeball. That's funny, and that is still part of Schadenfreude.
That is true. Um, I also look at it a bit like with many other types of feelings like jealousy and because I mean I have in the past been in a polyamorous relationship,
Hmm.
and my partner at that time, he did not experience feelings of jealousy particularly at all. Like it really didn't bother him whatever I did with anyone else. Um, but I wasn't like that. I struggled with jealousy, and for me, it's like this is a natural feeling that I have in me. Most people do experience feelings of jealousy to some extent. It's a spectrum of things. So this is not an unnatural thing, but I don't want this in my life, and I would like to overcome it. It's like I don't glorify this as like, oh yeah, because I'm jealous, I have more love for you. Because some people would say that to me, like, oh, he's not jealous, therefore he does not love you. Because you can't love someone and not be jealous. And I think that's glorifying the feeling. But I feel like it is natural to feel jealousy, but it is okay not to feel it. And I would prefer not to feel it, but I think I have to work to get to that point.
I'm gonna do that thing that I do sometimes in regards to like, here's perspective in relation to a lot of this. You're familiar with a lot of the stuff that I'm going through there. I actually finished a unit relatively recently about jealousy and envy type thing. So this is relatively fresh in my mind, and I apologize, but this is called Ramble On, so I'm gonna do that, all right?
We stay true to the name.
J- Um, jealousy. So like you have jealousy and envy.
Hmm.
And envy is wanting something that someone else has, like their car or their money or even their significant other type of thing. Jealousy is an act is a justification for control, and it's based in your insecurities,
Hmm.
because there are plenty of people who are insecure about certain things. I will be more than happy to talk about my insecurities at some times, but I'm not a particularly jealous person. Like, honestly, if someone thinks that I'm not meeting their needs in any form and they want to seek that elsewhere, we can address the boundaries of the relationship if we're in a relationship, or they can find it elsewhere and thank you for your time. I hope you have a good rest of your life.
And I
But
mean,
there's.
I think
Sorry, go ahead.
that because I am quite a controlling person, and it's not something that I enjoy about myself. But and I'm not just saying that in terms of a relationship, and I'm not like the most toxic that way either. I feel like I would like to be less controlling, and I'm working on that. But I have a need for control, or rather, a fear of losing control in all aspects of my life. It is something that is a source of a lot of my anxieties are related to losing control. For example, growing old and being unable to take care of myself, or ending up like with a disease that makes that means I have to rely on other people to take care of me. Things like that scare the ever living shit out of me and is something that will pop into my head, like compulsively thoughts like that will pop into my head. And so I definitely agree that jealousy stems from a need for control or a desire to control. And yeah,
It and like it's perfectly fine to have those insecurities and to express them and to be vulnerable. It becomes not fine when you're using that as justification to control another person, type of thing.
at the same time though, because I've also talked to a professional about this,
Hmm.
it's also about what do you want in your relationship? Like if you don't
Hmm.
want your significant other to um I don't know, spend time alone at uh, a friend of the opposite gender or same gender, if I mean gender doesn't really matter depending on
Hmm.
sexual orientation, but uh anyway, if you don't want them to spend time alone at someone else's house in the evening, well, I mean, that's how you want your relationship to look like, but you also can't force someone to follow all your rules in a relationship if that isn't what they are willing to work within. I mean,
Hmm.
it's fine to have your framework of this is what I want my relationship to look like, but if the other person doesn't want that, then, you know, either you compromise or you go your separate ways.
Hmm. And it's figuring out where your personal boundaries to deal with your personal insecurities are.
Yeah.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, the way that I see it is if I have a significant other and they go hang out with somebody in the evening in regards to it and they have sex, well, congratulations. They had sex. If that's not part of the boundaries that we set in regards to it, I'm going to flat up be like, look, I understand that. Things happen. This hurt me because of this reason. If you want to continue on, we can try it out for a little bit, or if you decide that that's what you want more, by all means, enjoy the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I'll be here as a friend type of thing. But it's trying to figure out where your personal boundaries are. Because
Yeah.
like if I got into a relationship with the boundary about hanging out with somebody of the opposite or same or whatever gender that it is, and they said that that wasn't a boundary, I'm fine with that. I'm fine if that is set up. It's like I don't want you hanging out overnight or at late at night with these people because I know that they feel that way and I don't want you to sit there and do that. And
Hmm.
that's perfectly fine. And but like in regards to that thing for me, given my own personal views on it, it's I don't really care. I just want it to not be sprung upon me
Mm.
type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think
And
also it's easy to assume that your own boundaries are what everyone else expects, or like at least that's how conversations have been for me in the past in relationships. It's like, yeah, well, this is just how relationships work. But I think one needs to recognize that all relationships are different and follow different rules, and different people have different boundaries, and that's
mhm,
okay. And I think that some of the healthier relationships I've had have been where both parties acknowledge that, okay, I have these needs and these boundaries that I need respected. You don't necessarily have the same restrictions on me, and that's fine. We don't get upset with one another for having different needs, basically. It's like, well, I don't like you hanging out with this person. It makes me uncomfortable if you guys are alone together. And the other person's like, well, I don't mind if you hang out with any one of your friends alone, whenever, wherever, whatever you do. But I can agree to your boundaries anyways, even though I
mhm,
don't have the same restrictions, if you want to put it like that, on you, because that person will then probably also have their own things that they want or need in order to function. I don't know.
Oh, like most of my boundaries are due to my living spaces and stuff like that.
Mm.
Like, it doesn't matter if it is a corner of a room. It doesn't matter if it's not like an entire aspect. I need my me space. My me space is going to be, if it is a desk, everything that is above and below that desk might be a mess, and I will do my best if it is bothering other people to keep it cleaned up if it is in a public space. But that is my space.
Hmm.
If I have things that you need on that space, like access to a printer, or if my computer runs faster and you need to do stuff for school related things, that's fine. Ask to use it, but that is my space. Period. End of story. Most other things I'm okay with.
Yeah.
But to kind of touch back on a little bit of what you were saying earlier, I think we kind of talked about that. There was one of your relationships, because we've been talking for the better part of 10 years at this point. One of your relationships, you mentioned that uh, your significant other at the time was giving you a lot of hard times due to your, the word that comes to mind is promiscuity, but that's not the right word in the past type of
Yeah.
thing. You know the things that I'm talking about
Yeah.
here. But like at the same time, bringing that up and making you feel bad about that from your significant other is making you seek validation from other people,
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah.
It's showing that, like, it's kind of like a, what's it called? It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because like if they're going, I don't want you to see any of your friends at a certain point in regards to it. That's putting in control. That's putting in limitations. That's putting in a whole bunch of various, for lack of a better term, abusive behaviors that make you seek validation and trust from other people. Because at least in your case, as we kind of talked about it, if you don't have that trust, then well, you might as well do what you want anyway,
Yeah.
type of thing.
And I mean, it's also I've had decently recently an experience where it was like me expressing I'm not comfortable with what you did today
Mhm.
and have it be met with you should trust me. I've told you that I would never cheat on you, so you should just trust me. And me being like, well, this still made me deeply uncomfortable and I am very upset and hurt right now. How would you feel if I did this with this person? Which my at the time partner had expressed insecurities about this person and me. And so I brought it forward because I thought this makes it a relatively good comparison because you spent time alone drinking wine with this one person that I felt deeply uncomfortable with.
Mhm.
So how would you feel if I did the same thing you just did with this person? And I was basically told, well, you're not me. You have a you have a history of sleeping with people when you drink alcohol, even if you don't want to sleep with them. Basically, is what I was told. Or like you're not as mm, trustworthy as me, basically. And for me, that's like, well, I know that I've told you about my past, and I know that I have done things that I didn't really want to do while under the influence of alcohol, but can we not use that as a weapon right now when I'm trying to address the fact that you did something that made me uncomfortable, but instead it's like, no, because you should trust me anyways, because I've never been as bad as you. In
But the
spite of the
thing
fact
is,
that I'd never done anything like that to that partner.
hmm
In fact,
but
I don't think I've ever, no, I haven't ever like cheated or anything on anyone under the influence of alcohol. The thing I'd said is basically I don't trust myself to assert my own boundaries when I am under the influence of alcohol because I've had instances where I've been pushed into having sex that I didn't want while
Mhm.
drunk. And so it was more conversations about, um, well, borderline sexual abuse that he then used as a reason why he can't trust me. And I think that that type of conversation ended up being quite damaging.
Yeah, it's more than a little fucked up. Not even gonna lie there. Uh, I can actually go forward and like my book's right over there. I can go find the things, but
I mean, that
maybe
being
some other
said,
day we'll be
I'm
talking about
far
it
from
more.
perfect about this. Like I said, I do have a larger than I'd like need for control, and I do impose. I sometimes try and impose rules or restrictions that I myself don't find reasonable. Simply to protect my own feelings. But like you said as well, I logically and rationally, I acknowledge that with these rules, all that I'm really accomplishing is I'm pushing my partner further away from me by putting limitations on what they can do for fun and who they can see and under which conditions. Because the thing is, if they find someone else, they will probably do so regardless of the limitations I put on them.
Mhm.
And I know that rationally. But then emotionally, that's just a different matter. Like trying to work that logic into your emotions as well. I think that's where my struggles lie right now. But I'm working on it.
Yeah. I think it's just coming to terms with the fact that it's okay to be insecure,
Yep.
and despite your insecurities, people are going to people anyway.
Yep.
And the right person or the right people, because we're a polypositive podcast here. Yay, alliteration. The right person or the right people is going to care about you and respect your boundaries and insecurities anyway.
Yep. And since you said poly positive podcast, I feel like a common misconception about polyamorous people is that none of them are ever jealous. From my experience speaking with polyamorous people and people in polyamorous relationships, many of them have times where they or have during different times in their relationships experienced jealousy, and it's usually more about working through that together with everyone involved and communicating about it and having it resolved to everyone's satisfaction, more so than it is about getting rid of all jealousy, because that's a tall order for most people, I think. Since I think that to some extent jealousy can also, or I suppose maybe it's not even jealousy, it might just be accidentally overstepping other people's boundaries.
It's coming forward in regards to like part of the thing in regards to a functional relationship, and what kind of makes it difficult is you have a lot of people in modern relationships and stuff like that. Their instincts is to, okay, this is what I have to do, and this is going to be the rule set for the entire relationship.
Yeah.
If the rules change, they're going to get easier, type of thing. And that's not always the case. Like, to be perfectly honest, I'm not exactly a jealous person. I'm perfectly fine sitting there talking about things in regards to it. But, like, there have been times where it's just like, I'm fine with it. I wasn't fine with how it came about. Could you send me a message? Could you do something like that? And that is establishing a new rule or a new boundary.
Hmm.
And most people, in regards to polyamorous relationships, because they want to make people feel better, unless they're seeking for a unicorn, in which case, get the fuck out of my mentions. Um, but like most people, when they're sitting there taking a look for it, they they think that the rules are going to sit there and they're going to be static because a lot of these people already have a lot of their boundaries figured out. And it's like, yeah, but you're different.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you have been convinced to do things under the influence of alcohol multiple times in regards to it because of your inhibitions or whatever it might actually be. And me holding that against you in a hypothetical situation, me holding that against you isn't fair for a multitude of reasons. Because one, I'm not in those situations. Two, even if you had cheated, I'm not the person that you cheated on, nor am I the person that you cheated with.
Yeah.
And so me holding you to those standards or you holding me to the standards that X has put you up to, type thing in regards to it. It's finding that balance between where is my lines and boundaries, how much of this is from trauma, and how much of this am I bringing the ghost of my relationships to
Hmm.
bear here, type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is very difficult, at least for me, to not bring expectations from past relationships, which is very bad considering uh, particularly some of my earlier relationships were very damaging to me. And bringing expectations from those into new relationships, it is very unfair to new partners because suddenly any mistake or slip up, or usually it's just, you know, a mistake, an honest to God, I didn't know this would hurt you type of thing, and it becomes um, judged almost based on what other people have done. And so then you start expecting more malicious actions, or you start to view mistakes as red flags or malicious intent, which just isn't fair.
Like a more hard example that some people might relate to, type of thing, because we were talking about people in the past hanging out with people, type of thing, or coming home late or whatever. Like, you had a partner that, in this hypothetical, cheated on you, and you found out because they weren't coming home at night, and for whatever reason, you sat there and you looked up their information. Bringing those habits into the next relationship as a tangible example is bringing your past
Yeah.
relationship into your current one.
Yeah, just
It's
because your ex cheated on you doesn't give you the right or mandate to start checking your new partner's socials, or like e- extending any excessive control over their life because someone else did something to you.
Mhm. That's generally what it boils down to.
Yeah. Also, I fucking
It's
hate the English you,
yeah,
because, you know, there's a general you and a specific you. I haven't been cheated on to my knowledge, I would say, and I haven't looked anyone up on socials that way. So just wanted to make that clear.
right. Yeah, it kind of really stinks that we got rid of thou and thine and stuff like that.
Well, I suppose. But thinking of, like, you know, thinking about it with a modern view of English, it feels odd to be like thou and thine.
Yeah, that's the bad thing about evolving languages as a whole.
I don't think that there's anything inherently bad about evolving languages.
No, it just gives people excuses on one end to ignore the evolution of it, and on the other end, you get confusing things like you.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've also always wondered because in Swedish, now this is a tangent, completely unrelated to relationship
Go
talks,
for it.
but because in Swedish we have like a different word for maternal grandmother and paternal grandmother and maternal grandfather and paternal grandfather. Also, same with an uncle on my mother's side and an uncle on my father's side, an aunt on my mother's side and an aunt on my father's side. Those all have distinct words in Swedish, which always, ever since I was, I don't know, when did I start learning those words? Maybe when I was 7, 8 years old. Ever since then, it's been bothering the fuck out of me that English just has like one word, and it's just like, oh, who cares if it's on your mother or father's side? It's like, yeah, it kind of makes a huge difference. I have very different relationships with my maternal grandmother and my paternal grandmother, which is to say,
Hmm.
one I actually have a relationship with, and the other I don't.
Yeah, I get that. And it's part of the reason why I joke about this with Netherlad and people in that server all the time because Netherlad really like doesn't like Dutch despite being a native speaker, like as
Mhm.
a language type of thing, which I get. I don't like English as a native speaker type of thing.
I
But
can't write in Swedish. Like creative writing, I always do in English. I can't do it in Swedish. It just sounds
that's
silly to me.
that's valid. But like the thing that I miss about it is Dutch and German is just like I need a word for this. I'm gonna take these words and mash them together, and
Swedish
now I
is the
have a
same.
word for this.
Swedish is very much the same.
I think Swedish is also a Germanic root,
Yeah,
if I
it is.
recall
It is.
correctly.
Absolutely. We are related. I mean, technically, English is also a Germanic language. It's just so influenced by Latin.
Because frickin' English would be a stopping point between Latin-based countries and Germanics-based countries having wars, and so they would just be like, "Oh, it's kind of amazing that we're still a language, so we're just gonna adopt bits and pieces from everybody."
Yeah, I think when I took English in senior high school, my teacher basically said, well, it's a Germanic language with like 60% of the vocabulary being Latin based. So, and then also some rules being twisted because of Latin influences. So, I think Russian is even worse in that regard though, because it's such a vast country with many different influences. I think honestly their language is worse when it comes to being influenced by so many things that there are more exceptions to the rules than the rules themselves.
Perhaps as a whole, yeah. The thing that comes to mind in regards to it with rules and exceptions to the rules and the differences, at least when it comes to English, because we've got a bunch of countries whose primary language is English, is like one like when you take a look at Russian, it's like what everyone speaks in the area type of thing, and then they don't take a look at the dialects, which may or may not
Mm.
have their own
Yeah.
sub rules and things like that in our languages in and of themselves.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I'm going to get really wordy about this because I like linguistics as a whole, even though I am only a monoglot. Um, but African American vernacular English is what it's called. It used to be disparagingly called Ebonics type of thing,
Mm.
but it is AAVE. It has its own rules. It has its own subset. It has its own system in regards to things, but it's still English technically. It doesn't follow the rules that regular English does,
Mm.
but type of thing.
And I mean, even then, within English, it's not like it's not like English in the UK is the same as English in the US or English in South Africa or English in
Australia,
Canada or English in India. So,
it's definitely very interesting, and the thing that makes me most upset about it is the way that English was codified. Yeah, a lot of it had to do with a lot of the Latin and a lot of the base rules. I also, in no small part, blame the nobility and the powers that be, because I believe that codifying English and enforcing it upon the English standardization of language is a tool of colonialism.
I mean, you're probably not wrong about that, but there is something to be said for standardization as well.
It's
So,
it's it's definitely useful for standardizing and making sure that people are on the same page in regards to it. It's the thing where I get from it is like by all means, standardize things so you can have a general grasp of grammar and what someone's trying to say. But like when you're getting to a point where you have gray and they mean the same thing and they're spelt differently and that's okay, but I can't spell something phonetically without somebody losing their minds.
Well, I mean, I personally, I don't like phonetic spelling, I will say. I think part of that is probably because Swedish is, I would say, a very um, accented language. We do not speak the way we write. And if you are learning Swedish just from texts, I'm sorry for you if you ever do come here because you will not understand anyone anywhere. Basically, because it is a very heavily accented language. Where we contract words, we skip letters and stuff, and depending on where you live, you know, we do it in very different ways. We skip different letters depending on where we're at, and you know, we have a way of saying yes that is you can't even write it. Like the northern Swedish way of agreeing with someone is just that's yes. Write that. I don't know how to do it, but
I'll go
it's
find a comic iter for onomatopoetic expressions and we'll see what I come up with.
because there aren't many languages that include anything that is expressed in an intake of breath rather than exhalation.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so for me, if Swedish were to be written in a phonetic sense, which sometimes happens in like comics and stuff too, or in general, like you know, any writing where it's like trying to convey that someone is from an area, but I think it looks so very ugly.
Yeah.
I do not like the dialect writing or phonetic writing, other than to highlight in creative writing that a character is speaking with an
Mhm.
accent. But on the other hand, I think that my dislike for phonetic writing has left me with a weakness in creative writing because I cannot write accents.
Mm. Yeah, I can kind of get that. It's the other part of it is when it comes to writing at least is figuring out where the line is between making a caricature and what an accent might be.
Hmm.
Um, I know when I tend to write things, it's because I write like I talk.
Hmm.
Like when I'm sitting there and I'm telling a story, yeah, I'm in storytelling mode where I'm going to sit there and I'm going to make sure that all my stuff is coming out and very nice and easy to hear type of thing. And this is how I write when I do that. And then, like, when I'm writing dialogue, it's all right, well, this is how it goes. There's plenty of pauses, there's lots of different things, a little bit of slurring to the ends of the words,
The
minor,
issue
but not
for
much.
me is because I think that when it comes to writing, speech patterns are a very important way of
Hmm.
distinguishing characters from one another. And I think this is probably where my biggest weakness as a non-native speaker of English comes in. When I write in English, but I'm not a native speaker, and I think that I have issues making distinctive voices or distinctive speech patterns for different characters. Um, I think that's something that I would benefit greatly from working on.
The thing that comes to mind in regards to it, not that I'm telling you that you have to do it this way or whatever, um, you can start with exaggeration in regards to it. Like, I know that I've tended to play around, at least from the role playing, with different accents and things like that. And I mean, at the same time, you also have the mockery Cockney accent thing. Well, where they kind of just skip their H's and it's all like avs and stuff like that. And even if you're just starting with something like that, or throwing in a bunch of ain'ts and y'alls and making sure the stuff is there, type of thing. In regards to voices and speech patterns, like putting in small things there and stuff like kind of makes sense.
Yep.
Um, the thing that makes the Minnesotan accent stand out a little bit too much is that they always sound like they're just trying to sit there and be your friend a little bit, and they always have the same kind of interjections. Like,
Mm.
and oh, well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you there for a little bit.
Yeah, and I think another
There's.
thing you can do to help with speech patterns is actually sitting down, thinking about your character that you're trying to
Mhm,
write, their personality, and what things will they never put in a sentence, and what will they almost always put into a sentence. And
mhm,
um, this is actually a tip that I got from someone else whose writing I quite admire. Because they would always sit down and think about what, like, okay, so this character is a noble, um, but spends time in the slums. So, speech pattern not quite as formal as this other noble character who's kind of stuck up, uh, and will always, like, be very verbose and always spell out everything. No contractions ever in this character's speech pattern. They will say every word out. No contractions, and well, this one will have some, and this one will like never use any word that's more complicated than this because they have no education, and this person is very insecure, so they will always or almost always stammer if this like if this situation is pressured, then they will struggle to express themselves or might need to rethink words or you know stuff like that. Just putting in quirks, not even necessarily accents, but just different speech quirks that differentiate them from one another.
it's kind of like in regards to like going off of that, it's Dave doesn't curse a whole lot. Dave from Chronicles, he does not curse a whole lot because he's a gentle type of person. And then you've got like some of the other NPCs and stuff that have sat there where it's kind of like taunting. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna curse at you. I'm gonna call you a bitch. What the fuck are you gonna do about it? Type of thing. And it's even when it gets to that point. And then once you get that part down, in regards to the noble character in your example that sometimes hangs into the slums, something that might be interesting to look into is code switching
Mm.
because it's like like a lot of people have a little bit of a minor code switch between talking with say their friends or their parents
Yeah.
type of thing, and then like even that can go forward with languages and stuff like that. Like here there's just been some times where people who are in a higher position are like, well, I haven't heard him talk like that in regards to it. It's like, well, yeah, that's because you're not part of the group that they would talk like that with,
Mhm.
type of thing.
Yeah, that's very common. Like now that I'm doing my thesis, we've interviewed people, and you can very clearly tell because we've in our interviews we've included questions about whether or not it's okay to express yourself, and it's almost always it's like yeah, well, in the closest group you can say whatever. We don't like have many restrictions on what we can say and stuff like that. And part of that is just yeah, your group shares a social norm. This we all agree on the rules of what is okay here. It's not that everything is okay. It's just we've agreed on the rules and we're all on the same page. And then they say, but if I go outside, if I go to the hierarchy above, or if I go to this other division, then I can't express myself. Then there are so many limitations. And it's not necessarily that there are limitations so much as it's the rules are different here than what I'm used to. These are not the rules that I have agreed to. Now I'm moving into a different group, and suddenly I have to follow this group's rules that I didn't help establish. And that can create, I think, dissonance. At least that's my take on it. I haven't read any papers about it, but I feel like that's probably what's going on.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Is it's an agreed upon social set of norms and rules type of thing. Like I'm lucky enough that where I'm working, I can have rapport with my bosses,
Hmm.
and that I can sit there and I can go up to them and be flat out, flat up, and flat honest in regards to it. I'm probably not going to curse unless something's extremely aggravating when I'm talking to the head production supervisor.
Yeah.
He's like second in command over me, which the owner being the only guy above him type
Yeah.
of thing. That being said, my direct supervisor, the floor supervisor, and my coworkers, I'll curse. I don't
Yeah.
fucking care. But that's a difference in professionalism and stuff like that
Mhm.
there. And it's not that me sitting there and doing that's necessarily less professional. It's just that it's kind of like, well, I work with my boss 2 hours out of my entire week type of thing. And so like it's a different set of expectations in regards to it. I work with the floor suit for 5 hours out of the week, but he's also the one that we sit there and we communicate to or call if we have questions,
Mhm.
type of thing. And like a lot of is the rules are indeed different, and a lot
Yeah.
of people don't recognize that those rules are different. They don't they don't think about it, and it feels stifling in regards to
Mhm.
it. And the funny thing is, this entire linguistic aspect to it is about figuring out where your boundaries with your coworkers in speech lies compared to your boundaries with your other work relationships.
Yeah. I think when it comes to social interactions, it's almost always about boundaries and rules, whether it is like two people and their rules with one another, or if it's a group. And you can also see that in I think this is pretty common that the rules between you and I might be different when we're talking like this compared to when you and I are in the Chronicles of Darkness group. Because then we're in a group setting and we have the group rules. So
Mhm,
you and I might not behave in exactly the same way as we behave when it's just you and me. And I think
mhm,
this can also cause a lot of discord when two people are used to interacting with a certain set of rules and expectations, and then they end up in a group setting where the rules are different. So one or both act slightly differently than they do in an alone setting. And that creates discord because suddenly you have expectations on the other person, which they are failing to meet because they feel the expectations of the rest of the group and the rules that are in the group. And I feel like sometimes people judge individuals too harshly because, or, they might say, oh, they're so two faced because whenever we're in this group setting, they act differently than when we're alone. And sometimes that can be two-faced and it can be like actively playing a role, but I think more often than not it's just complying with the group rules, which it is difficult to stand up to group rules and try to change them if they are already established.
mhm. There's a lot in regards to it. I I mean, even in regards to this, if this is just you and me, I'm definitely more relaxed after we stop recording. Because nothing against anyone here or anything like that, anyone that's watching, but it's like I put
Of
a
course.
sense of decorum on
Hmm.
myself so that way I'm not going over the top or talking about things that need to be talked about. Because technically speaking, even though it's just you and me talking, when we post this, YouTube's listening,
Yeah, and
type of thing, and YouTube has their own rules.
it's the same thing like when I'm streaming. I am not exactly the same person. Like, I mean, every time I think that I interact with almost anyone, there's a little bit of a mask on.
Mhm,
The potential exception being for me a partner. Because for me, I need my partner to be someone where I am allowed to show every facet of myself and not put on a mask, at least not all the time, because it is tiring and draining. But otherwise, there's always, you're always following some rules and you're always putting some sort of limits on yourself, or at least that goes for me. But more so, of course, if I'm, for example, streaming or recording this, then I want to put on a perhaps more social mask than what I really am. And more so in the past than now, but I sometimes had people approach me like in private messages, DMs, um, from my, well, who had seen me on streams and, uh, you know, sort of expect the same type of energy level. And I'm not saying that my streams are high energy because they're not. I'm I'm a pretty
We're
mellow
very,
person.
we're
Um
very chill streamers when we stream, yes.
yeah, yeah. Uh but like I will not put the same level of social interactions generally towards most people. Like my responses will be slightly more muted when I'm writing to someone or when I'm talking one on one with someone than when I'm on stream. When I'm on stream, it is also my role to entertain. That is what I'm there for. But it's not my job to entertain you if you're writing to me in my private messages. Then I'm
Hmm.
not in that role anymore. And if you're disappointed because I'm not entertaining you there, mm, sort of not my problem.
Not at all. Yeah, the expectations, especially in that particular aspect, the expectations between being a entertainer or a streamer or any form of that, and people expecting that in their day-to-day life, it's it's kind of, I don't want to use the term selfish of the person that's kind of expecting that, but that's the first word that comes to
Hmm.
mind. It's because like they're people too,
Yeah.
and it's kind of the part like when I'm interacting with Netherlad on his stream as a mod, or when I'm interacting with you on your streams, or when I'm interacting with anyone in their streams that I know on a somewhat personal level, I mostly lurk if I don't know them at all, but that's because I'm nervous. Um, but like when I'm interacting with you guys, I'm still sitting there being more positive and more open-ended to try to sit there and have you guys keep that energy up. I
Yeah.
know I don't have to, but I kind of try to do that in order to make that happen. But when I'm interacting with you, like after these or anything like that, or after like Netherlight with his things, or hop in voice chat, or the 10-15 minutes before we start our streams in regards to Scion or in regards to Hyrule Chronicles, it's definitely a more chill related thing type of thing about it. It's finding that balance, and people don't realize that finding that balance and keeping that balance is tough, is energy draining sometimes.
Yeah, and I feel sometimes I feel really bad for famous people. For me, like I'm sure this applies to movie stars and music artists and stuff like that, but I'm perhaps more familiar with like the esports scene and streamers. Particularly also I think because given that you can interact with them in a different way than you necessarily usually can with celebrities of other professions, people get the sense that they know these people. Like, say you come into a famous streamer's chat and you watch them every day for like 2 or 3 hours, say, you might get the sense that you know this person because you watch them so much and you feel like you have a connection and maybe you write in chat and maybe they respond to you occasionally. But and then you approach them out of stream and you are really familiar with them and you kind of expect them to be the same towards you, it feels a bit unfair to me because, first of all, they are probably, putting on a little bit of a mask at least, or maybe even a lot, depending on, how separate their streaming personality is from their actual normal self. But usually the two are not exactly one and the same. Um, so there's that disconnect. Then there's the disconnect of, yeah, you sit there and you listen to them for 3 hours per day, but they don't know you that well. Like maybe you've heard them tell every story about their life and maybe you've shared a couple yourself, but that doesn't, like, they've probably never seen you. They've never like sat down and listened to you for that many hours. And you expect them to feel the same level of connection to you as you feel to them. It gets weird. It gets weird.
Uh,
I've had,
you're not.
like, I'm not
Go
even a famous streamer, but I've had someone who was like, felt like they knew me really well and they were not very happy about the fact that I didn't feel very connected to them. But it's like, you've written maybe 3 times in my chat or something. Sure, you've lurked, but this is just weird and creepy for me.
ahead.
I
Yeah,
can't imagine how bad it must be for the ones who actually have a larger following.
it's also that it's just to kind of tie it back into things that we've been pointing at and reiterating. It's the thing is a lot like the example of the social work aspect.
Hmm.
People aren't necessarily respecting the rules that both people have put out
Yeah.
in regards to it. Also, Hello Kitty. But people haven't put out the rules in response to the streamer social interaction type of thing.
Hi, Balu.
Special guest today. But like they expect the relationship that they have with streamers to be the same relationship that they would have with a friend that they interact with 4 hours out of the day.
Yeah.
And it's not,
Yeah.
no
I mean,
matter
you
how much
can
that you want
build
it to
it
be.
into a friendship
Hmm.
if
Absolutely.
both participants spend the time to build that relationship, but to just jump into their DMs and expect it to be that way, especially if you haven't like interacted extensively in chat back and forth, it gets weird.
And that way with streamers, YouTubers, I think it's most celebrities in
Yeah.
retrospect now, and it just depends on how they deal with it. I think I heard a story about somebody whose wife was like, "He's in the middle of lunch, please leave him alone," type of thing
Hmm.
in regards to an old movie celebrity.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common. And then there's also like people who, I guess this is more with voice actors and actors, where they fall in love with an actor playing a role. It's like, you like, for example, oh, I love the Joker here, I want to date the Joker, and then they somehow get infatuated with the actor playing the Joker. First of all, why would you love the Joker? That's kind of messed up. But second of all, that's an actor with his own personality playing a role. He isn't this person in real life. I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess the big takeaway on that is most of the people that are watching this probably don't need to, but for those of you that might, is just to remember that the people that you see on your screen, unless you're talking to them outside of their performance hours, aren't the actual person.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. That, and, respects boundaries.
Mhm. Respect boundaries everywhere.
Yeah.
Work, relationships, friendships, entertainers, anywhere that there's another person, just respect their boundaries. And if you don't know their boundaries, it's fine to sit there and talk about it. You've been in a relationship with someone for the past 5 years and something's come up, talk about it.
Yeah.
It's it's
And
not that big of a deal, and I'm sure everyone will appreciate it if you talk about it a little bit.
yeah, and that also, like, if you feel that you have your own boundaries, then please express them as well,
Yeah.
because expecting others to follow those boundaries when they haven't been expressed is difficult. That being said, I think that it's okay to feel hurt when someone accidentally steps over your boundaries, but then you need to communicate those and negotiate them, I guess.
Hmm. If you don't know that something was there beforehand, make it known, type of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's an hour exactly, so that's a pretty
Yeah,
good place to stop.
yeah. I think that's about it. Making sure people understand the boundaries. We had a little bit of a guest appearance who decided to be very nosy and tried to rub up on the microphone.
Well,
What a jerk.
everyone appreciates surprise visit from Cat on a recording, right?
I hope so. I mean, we'll
Well,
see
I
if this
do.
gets to the most popular one.
Well, bye for now,
Yeah.
guys and gals
Goodbye.
and non-binary pals.